John Deere, once the heart and soul of American farming, is now at the center of a crisis that threatens not only its future but the survival of an entire industry. The company that generations of farmers have trusted for their machinery is now losing their loyalty, and the consequences are being felt far beyond the corporate headquarters in Moline, Illinois. What has led to this dramatic shift, and how will it change the future of farming in the U.S.? The fall of the John Deere empire. The story of John Deere's dominance in rural America has always been intertwined with small farming towns where its factories acted as the lifeblood of the community. For years, towns like Waterloo, Iowa and Molina, Illinois were proud to have John Deere as their primary employer. Thousands of well-paying jobs were secured in these factories, and entire neighborhoods were built around the steady employment that Deere offered. From families to local businesses, everything was connected to the company. When John Deere made the decision to lay off over 4,500 workers between the years 2015 and 2024, the consequences rippled through the entire agricultural landscape. At first glance, these layoffs seemed like a corporate decision to increase efficiency and reduce costs. However, the immediate consequences were far more devastating than anyone could have predicted. Local businesses, restaurants, grocery stores, and small shops relied on the disposable income of Deere workers to stay afloat. Once those workers were let go, these businesses were left scrambling to survive. The effects were felt immediately. Restaurants that once catered to factory workers found themselves with empty tables, and small shops lost their regular customers. But the impact wasn't limited to businesses alone. The real estate market in these towns began to plummet as families left in search of new opportunities with fewer workers employed, and local economies in free fall. Home values took a sharp dive, forcing many families to relocate as people moved away. School districts that depended on property taxes to fund their operations started facing massive cuts. Entire communities that had once been stable and thriving were now seeing their very infrastructure crumble. These aren't just abstract economic terms, these are real families, businesses, and schools being affected. When John Deere shut down plants and laid off workers, it wasn't just the company's profit margins that were at risk, it was the future of entire towns. This is the reality of rural America today. Could the company's decision to downsize and move its operations overseas really be worth the destruction it has caused to communities that once relied on it? And how long can towns like these survive without the backbone that John Deere once provided? Will John Deere's CEO recognize the damage done to these communities and reverse the company's decisions, or will it be too late to undo the harm? A backlash builds. One of the most heated issues farmers are now facing is the right to repair controversy. For years, farmers have relied on John Deere's machinery to help run their farms, but as technology has advanced, John Deere has made a disturbing shift, locking the software and diagnostic systems of their equipment behind a proprietary digital wall. This digital barrier means that even the simplest repairs, like replacing a sensor or updating software, require a trip to an authorized John Deere service center. For many farmers, this restriction feels like a betrayal. They've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on machinery that they no longer fully own. Previously, farmers had the freedom to repair their own tractors or hire independent mechanics to do so, but John Deere's new policies have effectively taken that autonomy away. Now farmers are forced to go through authorized service centers that charge exorbitant fees for repairs, fees that can quickly add up to thousands of dollars for a simple fix. This has sparked outrage across the farming community. For generations, farmers prided themselves on their ability to repair their own equipment. They were self-sufficient, capable of handling repairs and maintenance without relying on an expensive corporate system. But now John Deere is forcing them into a position where they must rely on the company for even the most basic repairs. The company's refusal to allow independent repairs is perceived by many as nothing short of extortion. Farmers who have spent a lifetime cultivating their land with John Deere equipment now feel trapped in a system that takes away their freedom to maintain their own machines. In response, a powerful movement known as the right to repair has emerged. Called the Right to Repair law is getting some pushback at the state capitol. The legislation would require manufacturers across the country. Farmers have protested, filed lawsuits, and even lobbied for new legislation to force John Deere to loosen its repair restrictions. Several states have already passed laws requiring the company to give farmers more control over their equipment, but John Deere has been slow to respond. Meanwhile, its competitors like Kubota, Axo, and KIH have been gaining ground by offering machines that are more affordable, flexible, and repair friendly. Some farmers have even started importing equipment from other countries that doesn't have the same repair restrictions, further signaling their growing dissatisfaction with John Deere. Farmers are becoming more vocal and organized in their demands for change. If John Deere doesn't shift its policy on repairs soon, it could see a mass exodus of customers who have become frustrated with being treated as nothing more than consumers rather than the partners they once were. Will John Deere continue to resist the pressure of the right to repair movement, or will it finally recognize the changing demands of modern farmers? Is John Deere losing its grip? For years, John Deere has been the industry leader in agricultural equipment, but in recent years the company's grip on the market has begun to slip as the farming industry evolves and new competitors enter the scene. John Deere finds itself facing a serious challenge. Brands like Kubota, AO, and KIH are capitalizing on Deere's failures, offering farmers machines that are not only more affordable but also more repair-friendly. These companies understand that farmers need machinery that is both reliable and cost-effective, and they are stepping up to meet that demand. Farmers are looking for more than just a brand name. They are looking for equipment that can help them stay competitive in an increasingly difficult market. As the cost of farming continues to rise, farmers are under more financial strain than ever before. John Deere's they provide farmers with a solid, reliable alternative at a much lower cost. For farmers who are struggling to stay afloat amidst low crop prices and rising input costs, these cheaper alternatives are increasingly attractive. John Deere's failure to adapt to this changing competitive landscape could cost it its dominant position in the agricultural machinery market. The company's reluctance to evolve and meet the needs of modern farmers is leaving the door wide open for competitors to steal its market share. Can John Deere recover from this onslaught of competition, or will it continue to falter under the pressure of changing market demands? Will John Deere continue to lead the industry, or is its reign over the agricultural machinery market coming to an end? China's silent takeover. As if John Deere didn't have enough to contend with domestically, the company is now facing a growing threat from China. Chinese manufacturers like YTO Group and Zeman are rapidly expanding their market share in the global agricultural equipment market. These companies are able to produce tractors and harvesters at a fraction of the cost of John Deere's models, and they are quickly gaining popularity with farmers looking for more affordable options. The rise of Chinese agricultural equipment is not just about price, it's also about accessibility. John Deere has long been criticized for its rigid business model with restrictive repair policies that make it harder for farmers to maintain their equipment. Chinese brands, on the other hand, offer machines that are easier to repair, more affordable, and widely available for farmers already feeling the financial strain of low crop prices and rising costs. The appeal of these cheaper, more flexible alternatives is undeniable, but it's not just about machinery. China's growing self-sufficiency in agricultural production is also having a significant impact on global crop prices. Since the year 2022, the prices of crops like corn, soybeans, and wheat have dropped significantly, largely due to China's increasing agricultural output. This has put further pressure on U.S. farmers who are already struggling to stay afloat amidst rising input costs and shrinking profit margins. As China's agricultural industry continues to expand, the U.S. farming industry is being squeezed from both ends: rising competition from cheap Chinese equipment and lower crop prices. If this trend continues, John Deere's market share could shrink dramatically, leaving the company vulnerable to international competition. Can Deere adapt to this changing global landscape, or will it be pushed out by foreign competitors? Can John Deere compete with China's rapidly growing agricultural sector, or will it be forced to step aside in the global market? Trump versus John Deere. John Deere's troubles are not just economic, they are also political. In 2024, the company made the controversial decision to move part of its manufacturing operations to Mexico, where labor costs are cheaper. This decision was met with widespread backlash from farmers, factory workers, and politicians, all of whom viewed it as a betrayal of American workers, but the most explosive reaction came from then presidential candidate Donald Trump, who warned that if John Deere continued with its outsourcing plans, he would impose a 200% tariff on the company's Mexico-ADE equipment. This threat was no empty rhetoric. Trump had used tariffs in the past to pressure companies to keep their manufacturing in the U.S., and the consequences for Deere were clear. If the tariffs were enacted, Deere's equipment would become prohibitively expensive for American farmers, exacerbating the financial pressures already facing the farming community. The decision to outsource production to Mexico has put John Deere in a precarious position. While the company hoped to cut costs and increase profits, it is now faced with a potential political and economic disaster. The prospect of tariffs has caused Deere's stock to dip, signaling investor fears over the company's future, and while some farmers supported Trump's push to keep American jobs in the U.S., others feared that the tariffs would make John Deere's already expensive equipment even less affordable. In the face of this political storm, John Deere must make a difficult decision: continue with its outsourcing plans and risk alienating its customers and facing financial penalties, or reverse course and risk higher production costs and lower profits. Will John Deere cave to political pressure, or will it stick to its controversial outsourcing plans? A threat to the workforce. The impact of labor shortages is one of the most significant issues currently facing U.S. agriculture, and John Deere is caught in the middle of it. Over 70% of all farm workers in the United States are immigrants, with a significant portion being undocumented. These workers are integral to the daily functioning of farms, from sowing seeds to harvesting crops. The current wave of stricter immigration policies, however, is threatening to deplete the already overburdened agricultural workforce. Farmers across the country are now facing the prospect of not having enough workers to manage their land, leading to a severe shortage of labor just when the industry needs it most. For John Deere, this presents a problem that could ripple across the entire farming sector. The company's machinery is designed to be operated by farm workers, and with the labor pool shrinking, the demand for new equipment could diminish significantly. If farmers can't find the labor to operate their machinery, why would they continue to invest in expensive tractors and harvesters? It's a valid concern, and one that John Deere must grapple with in a way that addresses both the needs of its customers and the realities of the current political climate in states like California, Arizona, and Florida, where many of the laborers are immigrants. The crisis is especially dire. In some cases, farmers have already been forced to leave crops to rot in the fields because they couldn't find enough workers to harvest them. The cost of hiring legal U.S. workers has skyrocketed, leaving many farmers in a difficult financial position. For John Deere, the ongoing labor shortage could spell disaster if it results in decreased equipment sales. U.S. farmers with a steady source of income, the dynamics of that market have begun to shift dramatically. A major factor in this shift has been China's growing self-sufficiency in agricultural production. Once one of the largest consumers of U.S. crops, China has invested billions into its own farming sector, making the country less dependent on foreign imports. This move has had a profound effect on the global supply and demand for crops like corn, soybeans, and wheat. With fewer buyers for these crops, U.S. farmers are being forced to sell at lower prices, often barely covering their production costs. John Deere, as the leading supplier of farming equipment, is not immune to the effects of these falling crop prices. The equipment that farmers rely on is expensive, and with shrinking profits, many are finding it increasingly difficult to justify spending large sums on new machinery. For Deere, this could mean a significant decrease in sales, especially as farmers look for cheaper alternatives from other manufacturers. The global shift in crop prices, compounded by rising input costs for fertilizers, fuel, and land, has placed U.S. farmers in a tough spot. Many are now questioning whether they can continue to compete in the global market at all if the U.S. continues to see a decrease in demand for its agricultural products. John Deere's financial situation could become even more precarious. Farmers need affordable, reliable equipment more than ever, but they also need a solution to the price pressures they're facing. Will John Deere be able to adapt its pricing and products to meet these new challenges, or will it be left behind as global dynamics shift? Will John Deere lower its prices to meet the challenges of falling crop prices, or will its high-end equipment become too expensive for farmers to justify? Climate change And the future of farming. Climate change is one of the most pressing issues that farmers face today, and it has only exacerbated the difficulties caused by falling crop prices, labor shortages, and political instability. Extreme weather events such as floods, droughts, hurricanes, and wildfires are becoming more frequent and more intense for farmers. This means unpredictable growing seasons and the increased risk of crop failure. While farming has always been at the mercy of the weather, the scale and frequency of these extreme events are changing the game entirely for John Deere. This represents both a challenge and an opportunity. If the company is going to continue to provide machinery that meets the needs of farmers, it will have to develop equipment that can adapt to the unpredictable realities of climate change, from drought-resistant crops to new forms of irrigation. Farmers are already investing in solutions to mitigate the effects of climate change. John Deere could follow suit by designing equipment that helps farmers adapt to these changes, but this will require significant investment and innovation in areas like California, where wildfires have ravaged vast swaths of farmland, and the Midwest, where droughts have left many acres of crops unharvestable. The need for adaptable, climate-smart farming solutions has never been greater. Farmers are increasingly looking for machines that can perform well under these extreme conditions, and John Deere must find a way to offer products that can meet these new needs. This could mean developing more efficient irrigation systems, upgrading machinery to handle extreme heat or dryness, or designing more durable equipment that can withstand the ravages of floods and fires. The challenge, however, is that many smaller farmers simply cannot afford to make these investments, while large businesses may have the financial backing to invest in climate-resilient farming practices. Small and mid-sized farms often operate on razor-thin margins. John Deere's machinery is priced at a premium, and if it doesn't adjust its pricing strategy, it could alienate the very farmers who need its help the most. Can John Deere develop climate-smart technology to help farmers face the future, or will it be left behind in the wake of changing environmental conditions? Big agri-business versus small farmers. The consolidation of land and resources by large agri-businesses is one of the most significant challenges facing the farming industry today. Over the past several decades, small and family-owned farms have steadily been bought out by larger corporations with the resources to weather economic downturns. These agri-giants have the capital, the technology, and the government backing to survive in a way that small farms simply cannot. For John Deere, this consolidation of power presents both an opportunity and a challenge. On one hand, large agri-businesses represent a stable source of revenue for Deere, as these corporations can afford to purchase large quantities of equipment and maintain long-term relationships. On the other hand, the continued growth of big agri-businesses could mean the decline of smaller independent farms. The very farmers who built John Deere's brand, the corporate takeover of U.S. agriculture, is reshaping the industry in ways that are difficult to predict. As more land is consolidated under the control of a few large corporations, the price of farmland rises, making it harder for new or smaller farmers to get a foothold. For John Deere, this means that it will need to adapt to the changing market. Will the company continue to prioritize its relationship with big agri-businesses, or will it work to provide solutions for small farmers struggling to survive in a rapidly changing market? Will John Deere become a tool of the corporate farming giants, or can it preserve the independence of small farmers in a corporate-dominated world? 10. Can John Deere adapt, or is it too late with so many forces working against it? Rising competition, falling crop prices, labor shortages, political pressure, and climate change. John Deere's future is uncertain. The company that once stood as the undisputed leader in agricultural equipment is now facing a crisis of its own. Making the question remains, can John Deere adapt to these challenges and find a way to thrive in the future, or is it too late for the iconic brand? John Deere's history is one of resilience and innovation. The company has always been quick to adapt to new technologies, whether it was the shift from steam to gas-powered engines in the early 20th century or the development of precision farming technologies in recent decades. But the world is changing faster than ever before, and the question is whether Deere can keep up with the pace of change. Can it continue to provide farmers with the equipment they need to succeed, or will it be overtaken by more agile competitors to survive? John Deere will need to take a hard look at its business model and make some tough decisions. It must consider lowering prices, relaxing its repair restrictions, and investing in climate-smart companies. Right to repair controversy along with its pricing policies has pushed many loyal farmers to consider alternatives, as competitors like Kubota and AIO offer more affordable repair-friendly machines. John Deere is facing the very real prospect of losing its stronghold in the market. While Deere has maintained its position as a leader in high-end agricultural machinery, it is increasingly alienating the very customers who once helped it become the iconic brand it is today. Meanwhile, rising global competition is threatening Deere's dominance. Companies from China as well as domestic competitors are making inroads with lower-priced equipment that is easier to repair and more accessible to farmers who can no longer afford to pay for Deere's premium products. As the global agricultural market continues to evolve, John Deere risks losing market share to competitors that offer better value and more adaptable machinery. The company also faces the pressing issue of climate change, which is altering farming conditions across the globe. Extreme weather events like droughts, floods, and wildfires are becoming more frequent and intense, and these changes demand that farmers use more resilient equipment. While Deere has made some strides in adapting to climate change, it has yet to fully embrace the innovations needed to help farmers cope with the evolving environmental challenges. If John Deere cannot develop machinery that is climate smart and capable of withstanding the impacts of these extreme weather events, it could be left behind in an increasingly unstable world. But perhaps the biggest challenge facing Deere is its inability to address the growing labor shortage. As immigration policies become stricter and the agricultural workforce shrinks, John Deere must find ways to help farmers overcome these hurdles. The company's machinery is heavily reliant on human labor, and if farmers can't find workers to operate the equipment, the demand for new machinery could drop sharply. John Deere will need to find innovative solutions to help farmers manage their operations more efficiently with fewer workers. The perfect storm of challenges facing John Deere: competition, labor shortages, climate change, and a strained relationship with customers presents a monumental test for the company. Will Deere adapt, innovate, and rise above these challenges, or will it succumb to the pressures and lose its position as the leader in agricultural machinery? The answer will depend on whether John Deere can recognize the changing realities of farming and adjust its business model accordingly. The future of John Deere and the U.S. farming industry is hanging by a thread. Will it rise to the occasion and innovate to meet the needs of modern farmers, or will it be left behind by a new generation of agricultural companies? The question remains, can John Deere survive the storm it created, or is it too late for the iconic company? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and watch our